Okay, so you found your first article. Now what? You're probably saying to yourself, I'm overwhelmed with all the information that's here. I'm not sure what parts of this paper to really pay attention to and what parts I can skip around with. I don't know how to go through and see all these big words and understand what they mean. We're going to quell some of your anxiety right here, right now, because reading scientific articles is a skill that is learned, not necessarily just innate. So, first, I want to give you some advice on organization. I told you in the last video that you can download your papers and put them into Google Drive. Well, if you haven't done so, I really, really recommend it because Google Drive is a great way for you to organize all the papers that you have, and then you can just delete them later when you don't need them. So, if you haven't done so already, create a main folder for your project if you haven't done so, and make a subfolder in there, an extra folder inside that folder that is specifically for full articles, meaning this will be where all the PDF files go that you've been accumulating so far. You'll also want to make a separate subfolder maybe for figures and graphs because you might want to use those later when it comes to your paper or poster down the way. So you don't want to have to go on a wild goose chase and go find them. Maybe it's a good idea just to make an extra folder and throw some figures in there as you see them. Another way to get organized is to name the files appropriately. When you download these files, it's going to be most of the time a bunch of gibberish, or it's going to be the author's name and not a bunch more information about that, or it'll be the entire long title of the article, and it won't make much sense to you when you see only a few characters. So I would advise you to rename your files consistently each time you download them so that they're easier to find instead of opening up one by one each time you want to find an article and say, that's not the one I need, go back to the drive, let's see the next one. What worked for me when I was doing a bunch of research back in the day is starting with a file name that had the author, the year, and the topic all in the file with underscores separating in the name. And the reason for that, we'll get to in a moment, is that if I tried to number my articles and then I used our AMA citations, which we'll learn about in a later video, well, those AMA citations occur in the paper sequentially, so they have their own numbering system. So if I name my file article number 1, but it's really the 6th article used in the paper, it's going to be cited as number 6, and I'm going to get confused. This author year topic thing worked for me because I also had one more extra step for organizing myself. I had a spreadsheet, and you can just use a spreadsheet, or better yet, use a page in your notebook to track all of the articles. Make a table for yourself that just has a listing of the author and year, the title of the article, the summary of the purpose of the article, the key findings in that article, and how it relates to your project. Have that in a table on a page. That way, when you say, I want this article that I see in my notebook here, it is by Smith and Jones, and it was done in 2021, you just have to find the article in your computer, Smith and Jones _2021. It's that easy. But make sure you do this immediately after reading the article because you won't remember to do it and then you'll have to go fishing for it. And your tracking thing should be the way that you organize yourself so you're not looking at your screen the whole time. You can do it virtually as a spreadsheet if you want to, but I suggest your notebook. Now comes the bigger question, how exactly do you read these articles? I want to get this mindset into you during your background research that you are on a scouting mission, meaning that you are finding a lot of information very, very quickly, but that doesn't mean that you have to scour every single detail and every single word that these articles say. It is not a cover-to-cover novel. If you skip around in the article, you'll be okay. So feel free to skip around to the easy parts. Why not? I advise you to start with the abstract. It tells you exactly what's up, what did the researchers do, how do they study it, and what is the main takeaway. In fact, most articles are literally set up with an abstract that breaks it down in that exact order. What's the problem? What did I do about it? And what do I know now? That's all the research is trying to tell you in the abstract. So start with that. If you feel like your article is still relevant to you, keep reading on and move on. If the abstract doesn't tell you anything that you really want to know about, then pitch the article and move on to a new one. You can also jump to figures and tables. That's a good way to understand exactly what you're reading when you're reading it, because sometimes it's easier to see it visually rather than just in words. So look at charts, images, graphs, and feel free to use that as a synopsis for the results, because us researchers want to present our research in a way that is easier to understand. Then, if all is well still, skim the discussion and conclusion to see if the author can explain what exactly the results that you just read in the figures and tables mean. What exactly can we infer and conclude based on the stuff that they found? They may even tell you what's next in their research, as in what are the lingering questions still? What should someone else try to do in the research that is adjacent to this? And that could give you ideas for what you should do for your project. You'll also want to go ahead and read the introduction pretty selectively. Introductions are always going to be long because it is literally the background information that the researchers had for a topic very similar to yours. So pick out key background points and definitions, and specifically why the study matters. They'll often include that pretty much at the end of the introduction. And you can also look at their citations to see if you can find the same articles they cited that could be your next article. You could piggyback on their research a little bit and count those for your next article. Feel free, in my all honesty and tips and guidance, to save methods for last when reading an article, or even just skip it for now. The methods section typically is not something that you have to really copy or even replicate. Therefore, you get with the rest of the paper the who, the what, the when, the why, the where. You don't really need to know the how just yet. Yes, the how is important for when we are trying to figure out whether or not we are going to do something similar to what they did in our projects, but that's a ways down the road. When it comes to vocabulary in the article, my last piece of advice for you is when you look at words that you might not understand, such as isobarometric, ask me and look it up. A dictionary is indeed your friend. They are going to tell you exactly what these words actually mean and how they are used in your research. There are going to be protein names. There are going to be countless molecules that you might not never have heard of, and that is okay as long as you take it slow and try your best. I know it's not easy. Good luck. Let me know how I can help.